Philip Kotler, which is a scholar that has left a lot of significant information and a lot of has done a lot of research within the marketing discipline. So once he said that it is no longer enough to satisfy customers, now we must leave them delighted. So to lay the groundwork of this workshop, we need to analyze these words of Philip Kotler because we are living in a very, very competitive era. Philip Kotler says that marketing has four major versions that a very long time ago, decades ago, as a matter of fact, marketing was in the version 1.0. This was when for companies was enough to sell a good product. So back then, it was enough to have a good product and it would sell. But competitors started to enter different markets, and marketing had to evolve to a different version 2.0. So the version 2.0 of marketing is that it's not enough to have a product. You have to combine that product with a good service. So you could say, well, Natalia, that's what we do. I think that that's enough to have a good product and a good service, and we can be competitive in our industry. And I would say, definitely not, because after that, things evolved into something different. Marketing started to be studied as something more psychological because scholars found out that who buys that product is a human being that have necessities and preferences, and the buying process, it's a decision process. So everyone started to study the human being. And of course, that is not enough today because we are in the 21st century and we are in the 4.0 version of marketing, entering the digital world, transitioning from the traditional world to the digital world, where consumers have a lot of powers because consumers have a lot of information. In these days, who has information has power, and consumers have a lot of information. So we are in the consumer to consumer era, not the brand to consumer era. This means that now consumers talk to each other, and what they say about the product or the service is more relevant than what the brand or the organization is saying about the product in order to sell it. So this is something very important to take into account in the 21st century. Organizations and brands are losing power. The consumer has the power. They have the word of mouth. They write the reviews about the product and the company. And if the company has a good selling strategy or a good communication strategy or a good marketing strategy, if there are bad reviews or there are consumers that are saying the contrary, it's not going to help the company. So we have to understand that consumers must be delighted with the product because they are going to sell the product to other consumers, not the company or the brand. So now we are in the digital era, and maybe you can say, well, Natalia, it's fine that we are in the digital era, but I do not sell a product digitally or in digital platforms. My product is sold in physical places. And I'll say, okay, perfect. You sell your product in physical places like supermarkets or fresh markets. But you know what? That doesn't mean that you are competing with global competitors or global brands or global products, because the consumer has access to both the physical product and products that they can find in digital platforms across the globe. So you have to understand that you are always competing with global brands, but that doesn't mean that you can have a very good place in your industry or in your market. You can adopt very good marketing strategies that can help you find a very good place in an industry as the food industry. So what we have to do in the digital era is that we have to be in constant search of information. We need to understand customer needs, and we need to react to that information with a good product and a good service. But not only we need to react, we need to anticipate what they want, because their needs are constantly changing and evolving. So yes, we need to be in constant search of information in order to understand customers' needs, but we really need to anticipate in these days, because it's a very volatile era. So that's very important to bear in mind when we are talking about marketing and the modern marketing. So first of all, we need to study our consumers. Who are in who are we going to satisfy with our product? We need to understand that that's a human being. It's a human being that is going to eat, consume our products, and we need to create a lot of value to that consumer in order to receive loyalty from them, because that's what we're looking for. So back in the days, we used to have 4 P's, the 4 marketing P's, which I am going to discuss with you during this workshop. But now we have a 5th P, which is the most important P in marketing in the 21st century, which is the persona. Yes, it's called a buyer persona, and this term was born with the digital era, because now the consumer has a lot of information, a lot of options, and companies must, or organizations or brands must understand that that persona is very unique and has a different decision making process, and we need to understand how we're gonna get them to buy our products and stay loyal to our products. So today I want to share it with you strategic steps that you can take in order to make or develop a good marketing plan. But first, we need to understand that the first step is identifying consumers' needs. We need to understand their profile. We need to identify and understand the consumer's profile, because this should be the priority for any business or organization. Okay, so I would like to quote Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, and he said that it's not enough to ask your customers what they want and give it to them, because by the time you've got it, they will want something new. So what Steve Jobs tried to communicate with these words of wisdom is that we need to anticipate and we need to be innovative. That's the most important thing, because customers change quickly. So we need to anticipate and we need to innovate in order to gain a good competitive advantage, a sustainable competitive advantage. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want, a sustainable competitive advantage. It's not going to be forever, but we can have a sustainable one in order to continue growing in the industry. So first of all, let's talk about the most important thing in marketing, the buyer persona. As I said, this is the fifth P of marketing, but it is the most important P of marketing. So to identify consumers' profile, we must listen with the goal of understanding three principal elements. And these are the personality, the values, and the lifestyle of our consumers. It is no longer enough to study them in a general way. We need to take a deep dive into their personalities, into their values, into their lifestyles. It's no longer enough to understand whether if they're male or female, where do they live, etc. We need to understand a little bit more about their lives, what's important to them, their priorities, because that's what makes them decide what to buy or not to buy. So, in order to build an effective and detailed consumer profile, we must answer this question. First of all, this buyer persona belongs to a mass or a niche market. I am going to explain what a niche market is and what a mass market is in a few minutes. Second, we need to identify their personalities. Okay, we need to understand what best describes this buyer persona. We need to understand their lifestyle, their priorities and preferences, the factors that may motivate this buyer persona to pay for the product that you are selling. We need to identify barriers that may prevent this buyer persona from paying for your product. This is very important. And how often would this persona buy your product? And what influences this persona decision making process when it comes to food products? So I did my homework and I brought you guys a very good example of how to build a buyer persona's profile. So I am going to use a plant-based product in order to explain how you can take a deep dive into this buyer personas. So think about a plant-based product and let's study how a persona that prefers a plant-based products behaves and make decisions. So you would think that you only have one buyer persona for a plant-based product, but this is not necessarily true. You can have a wider market for a plant-based product, but you will always have a main buyer persona because it's going to be the profile or the customer that can buy this product more often and can make the decision quickly. But this doesn't mean that you don't have a bigger opportunity for a plant-based product. So let's talk about the main buyer persona, which is the vegan. But let's also talk about two other different and additional buyer personas, which can be, for example, a healthy life enthusiast or a persona that suffers from a health condition such as high cholesterol and is looking for healthy options. So these can these buyer personas can be considered as potential paying customers. So you don't have to stay with the vegan buyer persona. You can focus on a bigger market. So let's start by building the profile of the vegan because it may be the most interested in consuming a plant-based product. Let's talk about a vegan personality. They are mostly calm. They take good care of their mental, emotional and physical health. Their values, well, most people who give up animal products usually do so for moral reasons. They show sensitivity to animal sufferings, and some of them make the decision based on self-care and self-love because they are in search of a better quality of life. And they have a diet that is plant-based, and this is very important, they are willing to pay more for products that taste good, look good, have good texture, and innovative recipes that they recognize and they understand that their diet is strict, and that there are still not many plant-based options that are creative and delicious and plant-based. So when they find this type of products, they become loyal consumers and they tend to pay more because they perceive a lot of value. So this is how you understand the buyer persona that wants a plant-based product, or that is in search of a plant-based product. But this is not the only buyer persona that may be willing to buy and pay a little more for a plant-based product. So it is very important to mention that these personalities, values, and lifestyles do not necessarily describe the profile of absolutely all vegans, but they can be found in most. They are common denominators in this profile. So that's what we're looking for, common denominators in these buyer personas, so that we can create our strategic marketing plan based on their personalities and lifestyle, because this is the most important thing. So after identifying the buyer personas for your product, you must identify if they belong to a mass market or a niche market or a segmented market. What is a mass market? A mass market um, generally, excuse me, is for commodity products. Commodity products are products that are based in the basic necessities of human beings, or basic needs of human beings. So if you're selling a commodity, you have to choose a mass market. But if you are selling an added value product, it's a niche market, because you're not selling to a mass market, you're selling to a smaller market that is willing to pay more if they perceive a lot of value for the product. And you can have both. You can have a product that is tended to go to a mass market, or you can have a different product for a niche market, but you cannot have both strategies in one product. You have to have one product for the mass market and a different product for a niche market. So it's like kind of black and white. There are no gray spots when it comes to choosing the target market. Is it mass or is it a niche market? No gray lines. So going back to the vegan product example, or the plant-based product example, we need to understand that although the market for a plant-based product may be a niche, if the product has a delicious taste, good texture, and a similar taste to a traditional product, the product can be accepted by a larger consumer group. And that's what we're looking for. We want a larger consumer group in order to have good profit margins and good sales. So when it comes to marketing, we know that this discipline has evolved significantly throughout the years, but there is something that remains constant in this discipline, and these are the 4 P's of marketing. We already talked about the first P, or the fifth P, but the most important P. So now we are going to talk about the rest of the marketing mix, which are 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. So we're going to study each of these P's, and they have objectives. First, the P of product has a very specific objective of defining the product or service that consumers desire. Now, it is important to understand that I am talking about what the consumer wants, not what we want to sell. Of course, we want to sell something specific, but it's just not about what we want to sell. It's about what our consumers want and desire. We need to find out. That's why we need to be in constant search of information, because it's not about us, it's about them, consumers. The second P of marketing is the price. So we need to identify what price are our customers willing to pay. It's not the price that we want to charge, it's what they're willing to pay, our consumers, of course. And the third P of marketing, it's the place or the distribution. And we need to understand where they want to acquire our product. And the fourth P of marketing is the promotion or advertising. And we need to understand the best way of communicating the existence of our product, because our consumers need to know what our product is all about and where are we selling our product and the features, of our products. So the priority of every business should be achieving a harmonious balance between these 4 P's, and that's what we're going to discuss for the next hour. So I like to make things easy and simple, because I know that this may be a lot of information to take in 2 hours. And I want you guys to be able to use this information to develop a good marketing plan. This is what this workshop is all about. So I do not want to make things complicated. I want to simplify things for you. And I came up with 3 simple and strategic steps that you can take in order to develop a very good marketing plan. So let's talk about these P's and the steps that you need to take into consideration when developing a marketing plan. So let's start with the first P, the product. What will you sell? This is the most important question. We need to answer this question. Any product or service that we aspire to develop must be grounded in these 2 aspects. First of all, we need to concentrate in offering value to our customers. Okay, it's about creating value. It's not about selling and selling and selling whatever we want to sell. It's about creating value, and we need to innovate. This is very important. We need to sell something different. We need to understand that the food industry is a very competitive one. So we need to innovate. We need to be different. And when I talk about innovation, I am not talking about technology, of course. Technology is a type of innovation, but innovation is not all about developing technology or developing a company that's intended to be in Silicon Valley. We need to understand that innovation is just creating value and bringing something different to the table. So we need to understand that it's about innovating and creating value when it comes to a very good product. So the first strategic step that will help you identify what to sell is to study market trends and competitors. We need to understand the trends of the food industry. So it is very important to study the food and beverage industry and identify market trends that will continue to grow in the coming years. Remember that market trends are related to current and future consumer preferences. So in other words, market trends help answer these two questions. First, what are consumer buying and what will they prefer to buy in the future? We need to understand and we need to answer these two questions correctly. What are consumers buying today and what will they prefer to buy in the future in order to develop and create innovative product and anticipate future consumer needs and preferences. So I also did my homework with the top 7 food industry trends of the year 2020, and this trend will continue to grow in the coming years. So I studied a report that Long shared with the food industry. Long is an organization dedicated to helping companies in the food and beverage industry innovate faster. So they are in the continuous search of relevant information in the food industry. So they published an article that shows the 7 major trends of the year 2020, and the first major trend of the food industry are plant-based food. Plant-based innovation is a major trend when it comes to the food industry. There is also a second trend, and that's the return to fruits and veggies. Consumers are returning to fruits and veggies when it comes to food products. So this is very important because if you sell a fresh product, whole foods, this is a major trend that will help your business grow. Whole foods and fresh foods and fruits and vegetables in their simplest form are a major trend. And a third trend is the emphasis on texture. So texture is very important for consumers when it comes to food products. They care more about texture than about flavor. So this is very interesting because you may think that they want good flavors. Yes, they do, but first they want good texture in when it comes to food products. A fourth trend is the on-the-go healthy snacks. So consumers really want on-the-go healthy snacks. This is very important because if you have fresh products, you can transform them into healthy snacks, easy to take to work or to have in your bag or in your car or to snack on between meetings, etc. So on-the-go healthy snacks is a major trend in the food industry, and you want to keep that in mind when it comes to innovate in recipes. We have another major trend, and that's the guilt-free desserts. Consumers want guilt-free desserts, sugar-free or plant-based desserts. So this is very important because this is something that you can use to innovate as well. You can transform food products into guilt-free desserts. And they are also looking for sustainable practices in organizations, in companies. So they care about good sustainable practices. You want to be careful with your packaging, with what you're doing, because consumers are very aware about global warming and other issues that have to do with trash and all these kinds of bad practices in terms of the ecological part of the world. So we also have a major trend with taste. They are looking for great taste. So they are also looking for good food with great taste. So this is very important, and I wanted to share these major trends with you guys so you can use them in order to develop innovative and very good products that can be sold in the food industry. So now I would like to quote Sean Connolly. He is the CEO of Conagra Brands, and he said that what customers really want is to see iconic brands get into the modern era, to see better food quality, to see modern food attributes. So when he's talking about modern attributes, he's talking about clean food. That's the major trend in the food industry. People want good food, healthy food. They want to know what they are eating. That's what we have to do in the food industry. We need to tell consumers what are they eating, and they need to know that it's good for them, that it's good for their health and their well-being. So I want to share with you some major strategies that are using multinational companies these days in order to keep up with these market trends. And I want to share these examples with you so you can benchmark. You can use them as a benchmark in order to create, develop, or implement good strategies, good marketing strategies. So you can use these examples of multinational companies for your own products and your own companies, even though they are not big or multinationals. So you can do this with your products. We see companies or brands like Gerber that they have been a long time in the market. They've been around for decades, and now they are aware of this trend and they are switching their products and their recipes something more healthy for their consumers. So here I have an example of a product, of a Gerber product. They now have an organic line product. So they are responding to these major trends. I also want to share with you these strategies that some multinational companies are adopting. So you know that you can use these strategies as well. Multinationals are creating and or acquiring new brands that appear to be artisan and from small businesses, but they really aren't from small businesses. They belong to multinational companies. So now we have brands from PepsiCo, like for example, this one that it's called Maker. This Maker brand actually uses the same Quaker oats. You know that Quaker is a brand, a mass consumption brand that belongs to PepsiCo, which is a multinational company. And the same Quaker oats that PepsiCo uses for their Quaker brand, they are using them for their Maker brand. So this is a strategy that responds to this trend, that the market or the consumers prefer these brands that have clean value proposition, clean packaging, their products are clean. So this is something that you should take into consideration when identifying a good product strategy. Know that consumers prefer brands that are cleaner and healthier and that look artisan. I also want to share with you this example of this new brand that was launched in 2013. This is a plant-based brand that is innovating in terms of guilt-free desserts and on-the-go healthy snacks. So you see that there is a major trend, and multinational companies and brands that have been around for decades are responding to, but also new brands are responding to this major trend. So this is something that you can use as benchmarking. Okay, when we talk about benchmarking in marketing, we see what good strategies these companies are implementing, so we can also consider them for our products, even though we do not have maybe a multinational company. So the second strategic step that will help you identify what to sell is to identify the market and adopt the most effective strategy. So this is what I like to call where to play and how to win. You need to understand where you're going to play and how you're going to win, because it's not only about playing, it's about having a good competitive advantage. And we do not have to compete with every single brand out there. We just need to understand where can we be competitive. So a product must compete with one of these two strategies. This means that when you identify a good product strategy, you also need to identify which with strategy this product is going to gain competitive advantage. And there are two major strategies when it comes to developing a good competitive advantage. These are cost strategy and differentiation strategy. Let's talk about them. First, we have a cost strategy that works for a mass market. Why? Because when it comes to a mass market, there are a lot of competitors, a lot of products, a lot of brands, and we need to understand that our product is not going to be alone in this market. There are going to be a lot of options, similar options for the consumer. So this takes us to a cost strategy, because in the majority of cases, the price of a commodity or a product that competes in a mass market, it is based on the demand of the product and the offer of the product. And sometimes the price is even regulated um, it, in terms of the government and the market. So this is very important. Sometimes when you compete, or when your product competes in a mass market, you need to understand that you have to compete with the prices of the market. Okay, so you cannot price your product based on the value that the consumer perceives. You need to understand that the price is based on the competition and the market. So this in the food industry applies to most of fresh and whole products. Why? Because they sometimes are considered commodities. So we need to understand that commodities, or fresh products or whole products, they must compete with a cost strategy. When it comes to a cost strategy, your product, or you have to focus on efficiency in order to minimize your cost and offer a competitive price while maintaining good profit margins. So what we need to understand is that if we want to compete with a cost strategy, we must be efficient. Okay, we need to have good cost in terms of production. Otherwise, we won't have good profit margins. This is very important to understand, because sometimes entrepreneurs try to compete with a cost strategy and they try to offer the same price as the competitors, but it turns out that they don't have good profit margins. As a matter of fact, they can have a lot of losses, and we don't want that, okay? We want to be competitive, but we also want good profit margins when it comes to our product. Then we have the second major strategy, the differentiation strategy. This goes this works for a niche market, okay? A market that may be smaller but perceives high value. So you can charge a premium price and have good profit margins, because when it comes to differentiation, costs costs can be higher. Why? Because you need to differentiate your product, and that is going to cost you. So you need to come out with a good pricing strategy, one that results in good profit margins. So this goes to value added or certified products when it comes to the food industry. Okay, so if you have a value added product or a certified product, you can compete with a differentiation strategy that can lead you to a premium price. So it is very important to understand that there are no gray areas when it comes to these two strategies. A product must compete with one or the other. So sometimes marketing is not that black and white, but when it comes to these two strategies, it is black or white. Either you compete with a cost strategy or you compete with a differentiation strategy. Otherwise, you will not reach good profit margins. That's what we want, good profit margins. So we need to understand that a consumer perceives value when they see efficiency, when they see quality, when they see innovation or customer service. So if you want to compete with a differentiation strategy, you really need to concentrate in one of these four elements. Okay, otherwise your product won't be different. So in order for your product to be different and to generate value, it has to provide one of these four elements: efficiency, quality, innovation, or a great customer service. This is very important because sometimes differentiation strategies are not successful because they do not create value for the customer. Okay, in the food industry, certifications also make a difference and add value to a product. So if you do not have a fresh or whole product, I mean, if you have a fresh or whole product, you or whole foods, or you sell whole foods, maybe you can differentiate that whole foods or fresh product with a certification, and these can lead you to a better pricing strategy. So when it comes to whole foods, fresh foods, if we don't have a differentiation like a certification, we need to compete with a cost strategy. So we have to concentrate on efficiency in order to gain a competitive advantage and to have good profit margins. So the third strategic step that will help you identify what to sell is to define your product. You need to identify fresh products or whole foods with high demand, and or create an innovative recipe or formula and combine it with a culinary experience focused on texture and flavor. This is very important. So if you if you want to sell a fresh product or whole foods, you need to identify products that have high demands in order to follow a very good market trend and have good sales and profit margins. If you want uh, to compete with a differentiation strategy, you can think about an innovative recipe or formula and combine it with a very good experience. And culinary experiences are based on good texture and good flavor. So now I want to talk about the second P of marketing, which is the price. Let's talk about how to price your product. This is very important, and this is a question that every entrepreneur tries to answer every day. So let's try to answer this question: how to price your product. First of all, I want you guys to learn that there are several strategies that you can use to price your product. And the three most common are: first, a strategy based on cost. Simply, you calculate the cost of your product and you add a desired profit margin. So if you want to sell whole foods or fresh products, you need to understand your cost. You need to know the cost of your product, and um, you need to add a desired profit margin, but you need to understand that there is a price in the market and you need to follow that price. So yes, you need to follow that price, but you need to understand if you can sell that product at that price, having a profit margin. Sometimes if you try to compete with the market price, you don't have good profit margins, and we need to understand what's going on, because we can't sell just units of the products. We need to sell units, but with profit margins. It's not about selling units necessarily. It's about selling units with good profit margins. So maybe less is more. Less units, but with good profit margins. Not a lot of units with no profit margins. We have a second pricing strategy, which is based on the competition. That's basically setting a price based on the price of the competitors or the main competitors. So if you want to keep in track with your competitors, if you want to gain a competitive advantage, maybe you can study your main competitors and price your product based on their pricing strategy. You can do that as well. But there's a third pricing strategy that I want you guys to take into consideration when it comes to a differentiation strategy. So if you want to sell a product that generates a lot of value, you want to consider it a price based on perceived value. This strategy has nothing to do with the cost of the product. It has to do with the value of the product. Okay, so if consumers perceive high value, you can have a premium pricing strategy. Okay, so this is very important because sometimes entrepreneurs are a bit afraid of choosing a premium price strategy because they don't feel confident about the value that the product has. So it is very important to have a very good balance, a harmonious balance between these three strategies. It's not just about a price based on costs. It is not just about a price based on the competition or a price based on perceived value. It's about having a harmonious balance between these three strategies. I mean, sometimes you have to compete with one of them because you have no other choice, but sometimes you do have different alternatives, and that is finding a balance. So I want to share with all of you three strategic steps that will help you price your product and will help you find that balance when it comes to a pricing strategy. So the first step is to calculate the cost of your product. Of course, you need to understand your cost. It's very different from your price. You need to understand the cost of producing this product. So first of all, know your cost and make a list of all the components and quantify them. Everything from the seed to the packaging to the distribution channels. Okay, this is very important because everything costs. Trust me, there are costs in every single step of the production process. So know your cost before thinking about pricing your product. You cannot price your product if you do not know your cost. So that's the first step. The second step that I want to share with you is that you have to study the prices of the market. Go out there, identify your competitors, identify what's out there, okay? And get in direct contact with your potential customers because they are the ones that are going to tell you if they perceive value and if that value is high. So you can take into consideration a very good pricing strategy, a premium pricing strategy for your product, because maybe you can do that if you offer great value for your customers. So this is very important to understand. It's not just about knowing your cost, it's about knowing the market and about knowing if your consumers perceive um, very good value in your product. So the third step is to analyze the prices of the competition and compare them with the price that consumers will be willing to pay for your product. If your price is competitive or higher than your competitors, you have to run a profitability analysis to calculate how much you earn by selling your product. So you need to understand your profit margins. Cost, price, and profit margins is something that you need to understand and you need to learn about your product. This is very important. So now I want to talk about the third P of marketing, the place or the distribution. It's not about having a good product and a good pricing strategy. It's about knowing where to sell this product. And trust me, not everything is business. It's very important. Sometimes entrepreneurs focus on a good product and a good pricing strategy and they forget about a good distribution strategy. They think that their product will sell in every single place and that it will sell with good profit margins, and this is not necessarily true or entirely true. Sometimes the product doesn't sell in some places, and sometimes it sells in places but with low profit margins or with no profit margins at all. So not everything is business. It's very important to understand that. So let's answer this important question: where will you sell your product or service? the distribution is the way your product goes from your business to the hands of the end user. Yes, the end user, the human being that will eat your product, that will consume your product. So we need to understand that this is like a road, and that road costs money because it has links, and every single link costs money. So we need to identify the best way to go in terms of distribution channels. So the first strategic step that will help you identify where to sell your product is to make a list of all the potential places where your customers could or would like to buy your product. You can consider both physical and digital platforms, physical places and digital platforms. The product can be sold in physical places and in digital platforms. So you can consider both when making this list. You don't need to think about whether is it profitable or not. We will get into that later on. For now, just make a list of all the potential places where your customers could or would like to buy your product. We will get into profit margins later on. So the second strategic step that will help you identify where to sell your product is to identify different scenarios for the distribution of your product, because many times we think we have the ideal distribution strategy, and it turns out that it's not the most cost effective one. So you really want to pick and choose. That's very important. You want to choose those points of sales that can lead you to good profit margins. You want to pick and choose those point of sales that can be cost effective for your product or for your organization or your company. So here I have a very simple and basic exercise. It looks that like it's for first graders, but it's not. It's actually very simple, but very powerful, and it helps you understand if you can have good profit margins in certain point of sales. So this is very important in the food industry, because yes, sometimes we think that we have a very good point of sale identified, but it turns out that it's not the best one. Sometimes less is more. I'm telling you this because sometimes entrepreneurs think that if they reach a good or a big supermarket or chain, they think that they are being successful, and it turns out that their profit margins are not healthy if they sell in these big supermarkets or chains or point of sale. So sometimes they can choose different points of sales and have better profit margins, because as I said, it's not about units, it's about margins, healthy margins. So I want you guys to use this simple exercise to understand and to choose good points of sales for your product. If your product is good, it has to be plugged into a very good distribution strategy. Okay, so if it's not a good and a profitable distribution strategy, you need to unplug your product from that strategy as soon as possible before it's too late. Okay, sometimes it's too late because if you don't have healthy profit margins, well, your company won't be sustainable. Okay, so the good thing about distribution strategies is that you can unplug them fast and then choose a different one in order to be competitive. So first, what you have to do is to understand the price that consumers or end users, not intermediaries, end users, not wholesalers, not retailers. That's a whole different story. I will get into that. End users. What's the price that end users are willing to pay for the product? That's very important. You're gonna start with that. You're gonna write that price in that circle, in the last circle of this um, exercise. Write that price down and then go to the square that says manufacturer. That's your cost. You need to understand your cost the from the packaging to all kinds of elements that can cost in the manufacturing process, raw materials, okay, like seeds and other raw materials. So you need to calculate everything from the seed to the packaging and know your cost, your exact cost, and write it down in the manufacturer square. Now that you have the price that your end user is willing to pay and your cost, you need to identify the cost of your intermediaries. If you have wholesalers in your distribution channel, if you have retailers, you need to understand that this is a business for them as well. It's a business for you and it's a business for them. So they are going to uh, have a good profit margin as well. So they are going to make sure that they also have good profit margins with your products. So if you have retailers or wholesalers, you need to understand that they are going to charge, okay? And you have to subtract that amount of money from the price that the end user pays, because you cannot go and just keep adding and adding and adding to that price. You can't do that because the end user is willing to pay a certain amount of money for that product. And if you do not have a good distribution strategy, you cannot um, go with a premium price if they are not willing to pay for that price. So you need to stick with that price that they are willing to pay, and then understand if you can sell your product with good profit margins using that pricing strategy. So now you can just subtract from the end user to the manufacturer and understand if after doing that simple math, you still have good profit margins. Okay, so you cannot just go ahead and add and add and add. That's not how it goes. You need to bear in mind that it's one pricing strategy. The consumer is not willing to pay more for the product, and that you have to understand if your product has good, healthy margins when it reaches the end user. Okay, this is very important. So if you do this scenarios with every single um, point of sale that you identify in this step, and you see that some of them are just not good, do not take them into consideration, but because that's a loss, okay, and that's not what we want. So um the third, it says first strategic step. It's not, it's the third one. The third strategic step that will help you identify where to sell your product is that you have to select the ones that result in a positive numbers and analyze if they are attractive places for your consumers, because of course they have to be attractive places for your consumer. So you need to for your consumers. It's not about selling everywhere. It's about selling in those places that they visit often. And those places have to be good for your profit margins. So you can go ahead and write down those points of sales that have good profit margins and that are attractive for your consumers. So some examples of these points of sales in the food industry are supermarkets and health foods, hotels and restaurants, small markets and local shops, and digital platforms. Food products can be sold in one of these 4 points of sales. They can be sold in supermarkets and health foods, hotel and restaurants, small markets and local shops, and digital platforms. So now I want to introduce you to the fourth P of marketing. That's promotion and advertising. So see, sometimes entrepreneurs think that marketing is about advertising or having a good social media strategy or having good presence in social media or having a lot of followers in social media. Yes, of course, that's very important. We need that. But first of all, we need to understand our consumers. Who are they? What are their lifestyles or personalities? What do they want? What are they looking for? And we need to give them a very good product. And then we need to understand that they are willing to pay some a price, a specific price, and we have to stay true to that. We need to create a very good pricing strategy, and then we need to identify those points of sales where they want to buy that product, and then we can talk about advertising and social media and promotion and everything. So marketing is way more than advertising. Yes, advertising is very important in marketing, of course. It's part of a very good strategic marketing plan, but it's not all about advertising and social media. So it's about communicating the existence of the product in the most effective way possible. This is very important. And to achieve effectiveness by communicating that your product or service exists, you should consider three important aspects. First of all, consider a very good branding strategy. That is an iconic brand. You need to develop an iconic brand for your product or service. You need to identify a very good value proposition for your product. And then you have to think about an effective communication strategy. So let's talk about these three important aspects. First of all, this is the first step to communicate the existence of your product in the most effective way. You need to design an iconic and memorable brand strategy. Yes, you need to design an iconic and memorable brand strategy because the brand is what gives identity to the product. It is the element that allows the product to be recognized, positioned, and remembered in the market. Without a brand, the product cannot be identified by the consumer. So, this is the most important aspect of advertising and promotion. The brand. The brand is the face of your product. Branding is one of the most important aspects of a product, and sometimes it is what generates perceived value. A solid brand positioning strategy is crucial to succeed in your market. Okay, you need to understand that the brand um, has a very significant, or plays a significant role when it comes to marketing. Okay, this is the face of your product. So there is a golden rule in good marketing practices, and this is that brands should not be changed or altered once they have been launched, because it interrupts, I'm sorry, the positioning process. It interrupts the positioning process, and this process, it's important, especially if you have a new product. If you just launched your product, you cannot change the brand of your product, because it is starting to be recognized by consumers. So this is a mistake that I see very often in new products and nascent entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs. They are not sure about their branding strategy, and they just launch their products with um, a brand strategy that is not effective, and they find out that is not effective once the product is already in the market, and then they have to change everything. And first of all, this costs a lot of money, because developing a brand is not cheap. It's something very expensive for an entrepreneur and for a small business, or for any business, as a matter of fact. So it's very important to understand that developing a good brand strategy is an investment, and it has to have a return on investment. So if you mess around with your branding strategy, you are going to confuse your consumer. This is not a good marketing practice. So think about what would happen if Coca-Cola changed its brand and assigned a different one to its much consumed carbonated drink. I have to make a disclaimer here. This is not advertising for Coca-Cola, okay? It's not. I'm just trying to make a very good point when it comes to marketing and advertising. This is not Coca-Cola advertising strategy, nor I'm not promoting the product or anything like that, okay? I'm just trying to make a point here in terms of advertising. This is a very well positioned brand, and it has a very good brand equity, okay? Because brands um, add a lot of value to the company once they are positioned, okay? This is very important to understand. That's why we cannot change the brand if it's already in the market, because we want a return on investment. This is an investment, okay? And we want brand equity for our business. So we need to stay true to our brand, and we cannot confuse consumers. They need to see the same brand, the same name, the same colors every single time they go to the supermarket or to the point of sales, because they're going to make the decision based on the brands that they recognize, okay? Because if they recognize it, it means that they know it and they trust the brand. That's what we want, okay? So if we keep changing it, we are not going to be successful when it comes to brand equity or building brand equity, okay? So to avoid that during the journey you have to change your brand, you must strategically think about the one that will generate the most value for your product before launching your product, okay? It's very important. So it's like you need to find the best match for your product. You need to find the face of your product. It's not just about what's inside. Of course, what's inside, it's super important. That's why the product, the P of product, comes first when it comes to strategic marketing and when it comes to this discipline. But it's not just about the formula or the recipe of or what's inside the product. Okay, it's also about the brand, and that includes the packaging. Okay, so 3 elements to consider when developing a brand. It's the name, the emblem, and the color. So it is very important. This applies to all kinds of food products, okay? Fish, seafood, whole foods, all kinds of innovative food recipes. Every single product has to be launched with a good branding strategy. Okay, this apply for everything. So think about the name, the symbol, the emblem, and the colors of your brand before launching your product. So let's talk about the name. We need to select the perfect name for this brand. Okay, it should be short, easy to pronounce and remember, and of course, in the language that your main market speaks. This is very important. If it's English, if it's Spanish, you need to select the language of your market because you want to connect with your market. You want to connect, you want to create a connection with your consumers. And of course, you have to speak their language. So this is very important. Please avoid using difficult names. If you cannot pronounce your name, your consumers aren't going to be able to pronounce your name. So sometimes I talk to entrepreneurs and they can't even pronounce their own name or their own brand name. So, don't make it difficult for the consumers. Just keep it simple, keep it clean. Okay, this is very important. You don't want them to change the name of your brand because that's what happens. If they can't pronounce the name correctly, they are going to change the name of the brand, and that can't happen. That's not good. That's not good in marketing. Okay, they need to understand your brand and they need to connect with the brand. So select a very good name, short, simple, short and sweet. No, just something very short and very sweet in the language of your main market. And it is recommended that the brand name is aligned with the mission of the company so it can be associated effectively. This is very important as well. So after choosing the best name for your branding strategy, you have to think about a good emblem, and you need to identify a figure that symbolically represents the mission of your company. This figure is known as an emblem, and it should be as minimalistic as possible so that your logo doesn't look overloaded. So when it comes to branding, less is more. Keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it short and sweet, and connect with your consumers. So after choosing the right name and the right emblem, you need to choose the right colors. You have to combine the name and the emblem with colors that communicate the mission of your company. Okay, keep it simple and work with 1 or 2 colors. And as a friendly reminder, when it comes to iconic brand, less is more, as I said, okay? So it is very important to understand that you can't overload your logo with 10, 20 different colors, because first of all, that's not good when it comes to printing and other things that you have to do with your logo, because you cannot print in 20 different colors. That's not gonna happen. That's not cost effective. So keep it simple. Just one or two colors. Your brand must be recognized by the colors as well. Um, think about Coca-Cola. What would happen if all of the sudden tomorrow their color is no longer red, is green, and their name is no longer Coca-Cola, it's Coco, or Coco or Cuckoo. Um, Customers are going to be very, very confused, even though the recipe remains the same. So if they keep the same recipe but a different branding strategy, their sales are going to drop significantly, because consumers won't be able to identify and recognize the product. So even though Coca-Cola doesn't change their recipe or their formula, if they change their brand, they are going to lose a lot of money, because sales will drop, because the consumer will be so disappointed, so confused, and they are going to choose other product, and they are going to think that Coca-Cola no longer exists in the market, even though Coca-Cola is in the shelf, is there in the shelf, but with a different name and a different color. So you cannot mess around with this. It's not good. It can have bad results. Okay, so it's very important to bear in mind that once the product is out there, the brand it's very important. Okay, and you have to start building brand equity. So you need a very good branding strategy, because you want to develop an effective logo for your product. How do you develop an effective logo? Okay, the logo is important because it sets the tone, the character, and the personality of your company or organization, of your business, of your product. It sets the character, and that's very important. Okay, because you need brand identity. Your product has to gain a very good identity in the market. Okay, so it has to be memorable. Your logo has to be memorable, relevant, original, unique, legible in color and in black and white. In black and white, because sometimes you are going to print the logo in black and white, sometimes in color, and it has to work. The logo has to be everywhere. It can't be uh, so small that consumers can't see it, or can't read it. This is not a good marketing practice. Okay, so it has to be functional on different sizes. Bear in mind that. So if you have an overloaded logo, it's not going to be functional in different sizes, because when it's little, it won't be recognizable, and that's not good. Okay, sometimes it has to be small. It depends on the packaging, or in different things, but it has to be there, loud and clear, for your consumers to identify your products. Okay, so a brand must be minimalist, easy to identify and remember, so that it has a place at the top of consumers' minds. That's what we want. So the trend in logos is to take them to their most simple and iconic form. So I brought you guys the example of Apple, the Apple logo. They started with this logo in 1976, which was super overloaded, with a lot of things. You cannot even tell what's inside that logo. You don't understand. You cannot read the name of the company. I don't know if you can read Apple in the top of the logo, on top of the logo, but definitely it's not a good logo. So that's why they had to change that logo. You see, from 1976 to 1977, they had a they worked with a drastic change, but after that they didn't change the logo, the Apple emblem. Why? Because they knew that that apple was iconic enough um, uh, for the market, but they knew that it was still a little bit overloaded with a bunch of colors. And this is not good. If you see that there's a lot of colors in the 1977 logo, so that's why they kept um, making slight changes in their logo, but they didn't make a drastic change in that apple. Why? Because they knew that it was gaining a lot of brand equity, and they just couldn't change the apple. So they didn't work with a major change after 1977, but they kept playing with the colors and the apple in order to have the most simple and iconic form into 2017. So that's what you see right now when it comes to the Apple logo, a very minimalist uh, Apple with one color. They work with either black, white, or silver. It depends, but you don't see the 1977 colors. You don't see those colors anymore because it doesn't work like that anymore. Things have changed with logos. Okay, so this is the major trend when it comes to logos. And now I want to share with you the major trends in packagings. Remember that I'm sharing all these strategies and all these trends so you can benchmark, so you can use this same strategies for your products and for your businesses, because they really work, and they can be very good in small businesses as well as they are in multinational companies um, or bigger companies. So if these strategies work for multinational companies, they can work for small businesses as well. So you can benchmark. That's why I'm sharing all these strategies with you today. So you can use them and you can adopt them, because they are definitely going to help you grow and optimize your business. So the major trend in packaging, um, when it comes to the industry, is that consumers want or prefer minimalistic, clean packages that communicate the value proposition of the product. So once again, I want to share with you the example of the Maker brand. As I said before, these are the same Quaker oats of PepsiCo, okay? Same Quaker oats. And if you see, um, the Quaker brand is still out there, but the Quaker brand competes in a mass market. Remember the strategy: mass and niche market, or cost and differentiation strategies, the major strategies. Well, this is what PepsiCo uses to compete with both strategies. See, they use the same raw material, which is the oats. So they use the same raw material to compete in both markets and to gain competitive advantage with different branding strategies, packaging strategy, product strategy. So what they do is that they use their oats for their Quaker brand, and they sell that brand in a mass market, and then they use that to create an innovative formula. And what they do is that they combine the oats with other ingredients, healthy ingredients, fresh ingredients, attractive ingredients, and they came out with this innovative formula that has a very good value proposition. So now they can compete with a different strategy in a market that wants to see uh, or wants cleaner products, cleaner packaging, cleaner branding strategies, and they use their packaging to communicate their main value proposition, which is USDA organic and no sugar added. So remember those trends that I shared with you at the beginning of the workshop of the presentation. Remember that trend, that consumers prefer um, guilt-free desserts. That means maybe no sugar added, and they prefer on-the-go snacks, and they prefer healthy food. Well, this strategy adopted by PepsiCo responds to those trends. So this is something that small businesses can also do. So think about this type of packaging: minimalistic, clean, communicate only what is relevant. You don't want to overload those packages with a lot of information that confuses the consumer, that just brings a lot of different messages, and that's not good. That's not a good marketing practice uh, in the modern era, in the 21st century. What you want is this: a very minimalistic, clean packaging that communicates what's relevant. Okay, that's what we want. So I want to share with all of you this mock-up of the branding that INprende developed for an entrepreneur. She's basically a one woman show, right? She's running a one woman show because she runs her business by herself. It's a very small business. And I want to share this example with you so you can see that these strategies can be implemented in small businesses as well. So uh, this is a brand that sells um, healthy drinks, healthy juices, and all kinds of healthy drinks. And we developed this branding strategy for this entrepreneur, where we created a very minimalistic logo, a we chose a name that is very simple, that is easy to pronounce, to remember, and we created this mock-up for her labels that is very clean, very straightforward, not overloaded. So this is what we have to do. We need to just keep it simple and keep it clean. There is also a major trend when it comes to packaging, and these are eco-friendly packaging. This is a major trend because consumers are paying a lot of attention to sustainable practices. So if they think that they will generate a lot of trash if they consume this product, they are not going to buy it. Why? Because they care about global warming. They care about preserving our nature and everything. So they are educated, they are informed, they want to adopt good practices themselves. So they want to generate less trash. They really want to make good decisions in terms of the 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 world. No, I mean, they really want to take care of this planet. So if they think that they are not contributing with the planet, they won't buy the product. So this is very important. The second strategic step to communicate the existence of your product in the most effective way is to identify your product's value proposition. So after identifying a good branding strategy, you have to identify a good value proposition. So what is a value proposition? It's the reason you give your consumers to buy your product. And of course, it has to be a good reason. You want them to buy your product, you want them to eat your product, you want them to have a good reason to choose you over your competitors. So why is this important? Because it really creates loyalty. Okay, so you want to be recognized by the consumer, but you want them to know that you exist and that you create value, that you add value to their lives, and you want them to trust. Okay, you really want them to know that your product is good for them. Okay, so you need to give them good reasons to buy and to eat your product. Sometimes the value proposition can be having a good quality. And when it comes to seafood, fresh fish, sometimes keeping them refrigerated or in ice for a longer time keeps the product fresh for a longer time, and this can be your value proposition. So if you sell fish, fresh fish, or fresh seafood, or seafood, you can think about having it refrigerated or in ice for a longer period of time as your value proposition, because it brings quality to your product, and your consumers are going to value that, and they are going to choose your product because of that. So quality can be a good value proposition. So keep this in mind if you sell fresh foods like fish or seafood, or any other agri product or agricultural product. So in order to have an awesome and a good and effective value proposition, you need to do three things. First, you need to think of everything you can offer through your product or service that is very difficult to imitate by your competitors, or very difficult to find by your consumers. This is the first step to take towards a good value proposition. Think about everything you can offer through your product that is very difficult to imitate. When I say everything, it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be one or two things. It just has to be something very difficult to imitate. So don't worry if you only have one thing that is difficult to imitate. That's way more than enough. Okay, something that really differentiates your product. That's way more than enough. You don't have to make a list of 100 things that it's different or difficult to imitate. If you come up with one thing, that's good enough. So make a list, organize those elements, even though if it's one or two, and build a sentence that highlights the most relevant and that's your value proposition. Okay, it's very important because a value proposition, it's what really um, gives your consumers the reason to choose you, to choose well. Okay, so you have to work with a good value proposition when it comes to advertising and promotion. So the most important thing about a value proposition is that the perceived value is relative, and who should perceive value for the good or service is not the entrepreneur, it's not you, it's the market. So the clearer the entrepreneur or you have the problem identified, the easier it will be to identify the value proposition. So identify a good or a major problem or a need within the market and try to solve it effectively. And then you will come up with an effective value proposition. So the third strategic step to communicate the existence of your product in the most effective way is to define an effective communication strategy. This is very important. Now, storytelling is the best communication strategy of the 21st century. You want to tell your customers or your consumers or your end user a legit story. Yes, that's the best way to go. Legit stories, okay? The value proposition should always be the main element of your communication strategy, but you want to communicate that value proposition um, as you were telling a story, but it has to be a legit story. You're not gonna make up that story, of course. You're gonna tell a true story. Okay, that's the best communication strategy of the 21st century. So yes, communicate your value proposition. Do not communicate what does not differentiate your product, and share stories with your consumers, legit stories. Okay, sharing stories is one of the most effective ways humans use to communicate. So you want to communicate with your consumer throughout your product, your label, your branding, your logo. You have to communicate with them because you want to connect with them. So this is very important. You don't want to just communicate, you want to connect. Okay, there's a book that I love, that's it's called, or its title is Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. So you don't want to communicate, you want to connect with your consumers. So you want to tell them a legit story. You want to use the storytelling strategy with them because they are going to retain that information better if it's a story. So use this strategy. Okay, it is scientifically proven that the brain processes and retains information better when it's received in the form of stories. So use this strategy. When consumers are in the decision making process, the stories can provide important information and shape the decision and the experience. The stories of satisfied consumers are a powerful tool of communication in these times and have a greater weight than the strategies that are designed inside the company. Work hand in hand with your satisfied customers to develop an effective communication strategy, since the story must be legitimate but co-written so you can send the right message. Once you have your stories, select the media where your potential consumers or customers are and share them. Okay, share your story. If you have a good story, if this business has a good story, tell that story, share it, because consumers want to hear that story. They want to connect with your story. And if your consumers have a good experience with your product, share that stories with the rest. Okay, be legit. Don't make things up. Just be legit. Connect with your customers. So the brand, the value proposition, and story must be reflected in your facilities if you have a store, your packaging, your website, your social media, and your team. Okay, you have to communicate with your consumers throughout these channels, okay? And you communicate with them with your brand, with your stories, with your team, with your website, with your packaging. That's how you are connecting with your consumer. So I would like to use this code from Food Navigator. It's about products that look, feel, and taste like they should. Things that are close as possible to their original form, that haven't been shape shifted, that have visible whole ingredients. So we are in the era of cleanliness. Yes, in the food industry, we have to keep it clean. Clean products, clean packaging, and a clean message.